All right. Hello, everyone. Glad to be with you guys. So, you guys know what we're going to do over here, right? I'm going to get my whole little theme song. It's going to be amazing. But I did, if you noticed in the title, and maybe you haven't, but domestic violence and homelessness is still an issue. And it's been an issue. Even when I was going through it, it was an issue and it's still an issue. So, we're going to talk about it. And of course, you guys probably have seen what's been going on in the news. Like, the internet is totally lit up on fire about everything with Cassie and P. Diddy, and domestic violence is on display in a very bad way. And those are the kind of things we're going to just talk about domestic violence today. So, what I'm going to do, you guys know what I do. So, I'm going to disappear. I'm going to put on my theme song, and we'll be back. So, here we go.
Get through his word. It's God's gift through his word. It's God's gift through his word. It's God's gift through his word.
All right, and I am back. So, we're going to talk about it. I recently, and for some of you may not have seen it yet, but I was asked to be a part of a PBS show, and I was talking about domestic violence and homelessness. And it was very humbling for me, and I was very grateful to be a part of it. But some people don't actually get to share their story. So I was glad to be a person that could share a little bit of my story that might be something that resonates with those that might listen later and say, hey, I kind of going through something similar, but definitely I can relate because I've gone there. I've been through that. So when I share about my domestic violence journey and coming out of it, I don't share it because I'm trying to broadcast to the world about me being stuck in something. I am, however, trying to make it very known and very apparent that a situation like that, when it comes to domestic violence, it's real and it is hard to leave. So, after some people have seen the video and Cassie was leaving, it was hard. And that was a very hard video to watch. I was floored. But those are some of the things that happened for others behind closed doors. She just was able for the hotel to have that video to capture all of that. So when I'm sharing this, and I can think about this now, that I was homeless when I was leaving that situation, and it's hard because you have to go through this entirety of making a decision that you have to make that judgment call. Am I going to stay here and be with what's familiar, what I know, or go into the unknown, being uncertain of what I have to do, where I have to go, and not really knowing. And for me as a believer, trusting in God and having that faith, like, listen, you've been shown there is an out, but I have to trust him. And sometimes as believers, that's hard, especially in a situation where domestic violence is involved. It's like you already know you're not going to have a place to live. It's a given, right? You already know you're going to lose your job. That is also a given. And you already know that the person that you thought cared for you clearly doesn't, and they haven't for a long time, but you've been trying to stay because you thought perhaps a change would come, a change in the way that they treated you, and a change every time they would apologize. And for me, every time my ex-husband would apologize to me, I'm thinking, well, maybe he's understood now. Maybe he will stop. Maybe he's changing. Maybe that is real. And it wasn't. Every time it would just go back to be more of the same. So, for some of you that know, and I've been doing this, well, since 2016, I left my situation, but I've been doing this advocacy work for a little bit, just a little bit of time, not too long. But my first start to do the advocacy work was to make my book. And I'm going to show it to you guys, which of course it's backwards, but I'll have to change it around. But this is The Gift of Find God's Love, Guilt and Shame Turned into My Shine. And this book right here, it took me a long time to write it. It took me forever to actually get the courage to really want to put it out. And I was like, okay, if I do this, what's going to happen? Because when I wrote it, I'm going to be honest, I was 100% scared. And I was not confident in what I was sharing. So when I discovered that, okay, they're going to put it out, I couldn't back down with it after that. And when I'm sharing about domestic violence, sometimes people will say stuff, and maybe unbeknownst to them, they don't care, and they say harmful things like, if you're so unhappy, if the situation is so bad, then why don't you just pack up and leave? I mean, I don't understand. It's not that hard. Just grab your stuff and jet. If only it were that easy. And see, the part that people don't seem to understand is when people are trying to leave, that is the most hardest and most dangerous time, because the person who is being the one that harms and being the one that is abusing the other individual doesn't want that person to leave. And when they find out, they will do everything to try and really end that person's life. And as you can see with what's been shown all across the internet, with what was shown in the video with P. Diddy going after Cassie, it's just like she was trying to leave. So if anybody were going to ask her, well, why'd you stay? I'm sure the video made it very apparent she was leaving. She was trying to get out of that situation. Thank you, Aunt Capone. And you guys, Aunt Capone, I've been rocking with him for a long time, one of my old podcasters that I know. And this is one of the things I've been talking about on my podcast for a long time. Although some people are like, oh, well, she only talks about the Lord. No, if you listen to my podcast, I don't just talk about the Lord. He is 100% what I talk about first. But I also talk about domestic violence. I also talk about the faith and the courage that it took that I had to get out of that thing. So it's not just God's Gift to His Word podcast. It's not just about Bible studies and just about the Lord's Word only. I do talk about domestic violence. I do talk about some other things that are not your typical average run of the mill kind of, I want to talk about it. There's a lot of things that I say on there that I've said like for 6 years now. And some people don't like that. They don't like it. And when you know that you have people like Ann Capone and some other podcasters that are out there still doing their thing, still doing whatever, you already know the voice that you have. And this is what I wanted to share with a lot of different people that I was trying to teach before things got weird. But it's your message and your voice. And what I share from me, one of my stories is about domestic violence, and it's never 100% okay. And I say that repeat, and I'll say it and repeat again. It's never okay for anybody to put their hands on you, be it you're a woman or be it you're a man. I 100% don't care. Just you shouldn't be doing that. When you're older and you're a grown person and you're beating on men or a woman, just no, hashtag it's not okay. You have to speak up. And for me, the reason I share is because it took me 7 years to share my story. It took me 7 years of doing this and living in a abusive marriage where I told no one. Listen up. I told no one. So when people say, well, why are you coming out now? Or why did this person wait? People don't understand trauma. People don't understand domestic abuse and how that actually is perpetuated with that person gaslighting you, saying these repetitive things that is programming in your mind. And you have to stay with that person every day in and day out, day in and day out, from the time you wake up, from the time you go to bed, and every day in between. And every time in between, that person is programming you to think about what they are putting and spewing into your head. And that's all you can think about because you're dealing with them. So one of the things that my ex used to say is like, listen, who else is going to be with you? I mean, really, who's going to want you after I've given you 4 kids, right? You're big and you're black. And because he was a white man, you're big, you're black, no one wants you. You got 4 kids. No man is going to want to deal with you, especially no. And for a while, for a long time, I was like, wow, he's probably right. And I've gone through this shameful thing of domestic violence where I should not have allowed that to happen at that time. And I was saying these things in my head, right? I know better now. And I had to have people help me to see and understand what I was going through. Because when you're in the situation, you can't see it, you don't understand. And you don't understand that you're in survival mode. The entire time you think that you got everything under control, things are going great, you're doing your life, but no, you're being isolated, you're being gaslit, you're being abused verbally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, financially. You're going through all of it. Oh, let's stop this. Okay. So I'm gonna take my camera off because I think it got frozen. I don't know if you guys can hear me or not, but let's see if it works again. No, it does not. Okay, we'll just go ahead and just rock with the avatar because my system wants to do what it wants to do. But anyway, I did not have the courage for a long time to step out and tell people what was going on. I decided that I would do it. And at the time, I was trying to figure out what I needed to do for my kids. Being in a situation where I left and I was living with my family, which I didn't want to do. I totally didn't want to do that, but I had nowhere else to go. I had no other choice. And for me, going back and forth between a transitional facility where I was declared homeless, right, which is the piece that was shared for PBS, which is in, of course, this description. You guys can check it out. And I think I'm going to see if I can grab it for you guys and put it in the comments here so you can see it and you guys can go check it out later. So let me just drop that in the comments real quick because boom. Okay, that should go up. So everybody should be able to see that later on. But when you go on YouTube, you can see me and some other ladies and, of course, the interviewer discussing domestic violence and homelessness. Sometimes when people leave the situation, they think, well, I'm not homeless. Well, you are, because you don't have a place to live. And it's kind of scary. And it's not fun. It's not a fun situation to go through. And some people can be extremely embarrassed by it, extremely ashamed of it, feeling guilty that they allowed themselves to be harmed in such a way, and just berate and belittle and beat themselves up on top of what was done to them. And they just continue to do that. You see, when I'm watching this stuff, domestic violence and awareness of it and homelessness, that shouldn't just be a topic that comes around in October, which, it's relegated to October, but it shouldn't be, because domestic violence is happening all the time, everywhere, every day, in every part of the world. And it's happening in the United States all across the board in all types of areas, whether you're a high CEO or you're a person that does a domestic work, or it doesn't matter. Domestic violence is an equal opportunity abuser, and that's what it will do. It provides the abuse, and it doesn't really care at what part of the echelon that you reside in, whether you're very low, in the middle, or high. It does not care. So when you sit and you know that there is abuse happening, but you don't say anything, you're part of the problem. And you don't want to really do anything, you're also part of the problem. Sometimes we sit, and because we've been desensitized for so long, watching so many people be abused in music, you hear it in different kinds of shows. And some of those shows that I used to watch some of these movies, and now, man, it's like a scary flick to me. One of the movies I saw with it's an old movie with Julia Roberts, Sleeping with the Enemy. And there was a scene where she's moved away from her abusive husband, right? And she's kind of faked that she's gone and all this stuff. He finds out that she's alive and she's somewhere else. And he goes to where she's located, whatever city she selected. And she understands what he's like. So when she leaves, she has everything kind of disorganized and a little bit messy for her taste because that's what she does. And when she comes back to her home, she realizes that on the stove, the kitchen towels are nicely and neatly positioned. And when she opens her cabinet, all of the canned goods are alphabetized and they are nice and neat and orderly. And she knows who did that. And she knows he's in her home and she knows he's found her. Very scary. And another one I saw, Till Death Do Us Part, I believe, where the husband, he seems so nice, so kind, and he buys his wife this beautiful piano so she can, play it. And then one day she got upset or something, and of course he hit her. But the whole point being is these things for me, when I see those kinds of movies, they do something inside of me and it hurts. And, I know I have to adjust the way that I am to certain people. Like if there's a person that raises their voice to me in a certain kind of way, I shut down and I definitely distance myself because I've gone through that for many, many years and I don't like that. It gives me a knot in the pit of my stomach and it's like it hurts me. So when I see what Cassie was going through, and people may have not believed her, people may have not believed a lot of things that, oh, she's just lying. No, there is serious and harmful things that happen with domestic violence. And at the end of it, if a person is not careful, what ends up happening is they end up losing their life. And that's the part we don't want. We don't want that. So I've been thinking about this for a long time because I thought, Lord, should I even talk about this? And one thing that I remember my brother had said to me, he's like, do you want to be a poster child for domestic violence? I was like, I want to be the poster child, but I do want people to know about it. Like, okay, but why do you have to do it? Well, because I went through it. And since I went through it and I came out of it, the Lord helped me to get through that. And I'm on the other side of that. I need to be sharing about it. I need to be telling other people about it. And I'm not the only one that's gone through this. And there are people that need to know that if they're in that situation, that the Lord will bring you out of it, but you got to be willing to listen and you got to be really willing to move because it can be a challenge and it's scary. I'm not going to sit up here and lie about that. It can be very, very scary jumping out into the deep end, not sure of where you're going to be, not sure of how things is going to plan out, not sure of where you're going to be, who you're going to know, what's going to happen to you. Because at this moment, you're in a very vulnerable situation now. You've left a very toxic, volatile situation, and now you find yourself in a very vulnerable situation, not having a place to live for yourself. And maybe it's you and your children, or you and your pet, or just you. And you're just out trying to figure out how to get help, how to get resources, how to navigate all the things. And it can be daunting. It can be daunting. It can be scary. And after doing that piece, I recalled how I felt when I first left. Oh, I second guessed myself so much. I thought, am I making the right decision? Because I did select him. I did choose him for me to marry. And then I made kids with him. And I love my children. Don't get me wrong. I love them. But when I was thinking about that stuff, I was like, man, I should have not had those feelings for him. I should have not this. And, this I wish I coulda, woulda, shoulda kind of thing. And I was just thinking in my head, man, if I had been more mentally strong and just my life be different, maybe I wouldn't have selected him because I was raised in a very abusive household. And I don't take that and hide it. I was. My mother was extremely, extremely strict, and she's Jamaican, and I just had to wrestle with some things. And once you've gone through something, you're kind of marked in a way. So it's not like he didn't see that there were things that I was doing that he watched. He watched me, he studied me, and he studied what was going on in my family. And so when he stepped in to take over kind of the reins, he stepped in and was kind of, to me, my knight in shining armor, kind of saving me from what I was dealing with because I was trying to get out of that situation. And for so long, it was hard for me to talk about. It was hard for me to deal with. And I just couldn't. I couldn't find a way to do it. I couldn't find a way to get help. It's like you're screaming and nobody can hear you. Your cries, they go unheard. The Lord hears them, but then you wonder if he's hearing me and he's not moving. And you cry at night. You cry alone. You're trying to figure out a way. You're going through the motions of day to day life, cooking and cleaning and taking care of things. And you're just being treated poorly over and over and over again to the point of one day there is a confrontation that's super harsh, harsher than all of the other ones, but this is a life and death one. And I recall the very last part because I thought that I could handle the abuse for a long time and maybe he would change. But on the last time, which was March, it was March 17, 2016. And he said to me that night, I'll go to jail for assault. I knew then, as he was staring at me, he was a man I didn't recognize. I didn't recognize the stare in his eyes. I didn't recognize the extreme rage and anger that he had for who knows why, but he hadn't been drinking or anything. He was just over the top angry. And this was an anger that was an anger to end my life. And of course, the story of his hands around my neck and squeezing it to strangle me to death. And my kids are watching, and by the grace of God and his mercy, I am alive today to tell the tale. And sometimes people tell me, well, since that happened so long ago, it doesn't have anything to do with your throat. Maybe, maybe not. But I do know one thing. Domestic violence is nothing to laugh at. Domestic violence is not anything to run away from. And domestic violence continues to grow in the darkness of silence. So you must speak up about it. You must speak out about it. You must continue to stand and be the light that shows others in a dark space and place in their life that they're suffering through domestic violence. That if you make the choice to leave, yes, it will be hard at first, but you'll be out of that situation and you'll be okay. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know how I was going to make it. I didn't know how I was going to take care of my kids. I didn't know where I was going to live. All these questions of their schooling and everything. I had kids and I didn't know how I was going to do it with all four of them. And I had to flee. Four kids, all young, and I had to flee. I just had to come on here and just talk just a little bit about this. Pastor Jay and I will probably be talking again later and dealing with Why Are You So Rebellious? I'll be doing part 4 with him, probably call that the interview of Why You're So Rebellious, and see how he handled that situation that you guys know that I've shared on here. I do apologize for my My face being frozen. I don't know what that's about, but I keep checking to see if it's going to change, but it's still frozen. So if you're interested in understanding about domestic violence and you think that a person should have just left and it's easy, I hope you know it's not. I hope you know it's hard. I hope you know that people take years to recover from things like that. I'm recovering, and I mean that like financially, mentally, physically, spiritually, all those things. I'm still recovering. Like my weight right now is one of the things I'm working on. And because of me being within that situation for a long time, and I was trying at that time to, eat better, do what, but it's hard. So there's a lot of psychological stuff that goes on with you as you're trying to flee, as you're trying to get better, and you're trying within that situation to work it out. And sometimes you can't. It doesn't matter. And so all those things that took me years and years to do, the Lord has helped me to finally come to terms with. But man, sitting in that thing, I was in that thing for 7 years quietly. Yeah. And it wasn't for a few more years before I got my divorce. And my divorce, to be honest, it's still fresh and new, even though it's been 4 years. I left in 2016 and I thought I'd get my divorce just in that time too, but it didn't happen. Like all these other things came about. And so I would go to the courthouse all the time. I felt like I was working at the court, living in the courthouse every time. And it was hard to even get a divorce from this situation. And it wasn't until 2020, January 26th of 2020, that the judge said, "Hey, you're divorced and send me my papers by mail." Now I know some people are like, well, the Bible teaches you're supposed to stay married, right, to someone who is also a believer. When you find someone who's not and you are unevenly yoked in any manner, that's not going to work out. It's not. And one thing that I know that I will warn some believers, some sisters in the body of Christ, just because someone goes to church with you and they get baptized or they say they accept Jesus Christ as their personal Lord and Savior does not mean that they have accepted Jesus, does not mean that they care. All that means is it's a show for you. It's a show for you. If they're not changed in their heart and nothing has changed about them, and they're not even volunteering their time to even serve or do anything that resembles some type of Christ-like behavior in them, some kind of change, that person is just giving you a show. They're just doing that because they want to impress you and then they want to capture you as a reward for themselves so you can be with them. Be careful. Be mindful. Be discerning. Not everybody that goes to church with you, and because they're trying to get with you, they're trying to marry you or they're trying to be your significant, whether that be a boyfriend or a fiance or whatnot. If that person doesn't have their own dealings in a fellowship and a serving capacity that has nothing to do with you at all, then you really need to reevaluate. Because if someone's just going to show you they can do a show, well, then after that, you going to Bible study is going to be annoying. You sing gospel songs that you enjoy to praise. What I just learned at church, you're Shagainoth, high praise. You have it, but you can't because you got to turn that down because that person doesn't want to hear that. Being unevenly yoked is so detrimental that it can cause to end your life if you find yourself and end up with the wrong person. So I'm not sharing this because it's fun for me. I'm sharing this so there will be nobody else or no one else that ends up in my shoes. If you can hear me and you might be in a situation like that, you need to leave. And you need to leave as soon as it's safe to do so. And you planned it out and you need to rock and roll and get up out of there without telling that person, oh, I'm about to leave. Just don't do that. Don't say that. Just quietly go, so you can at least keep your life. So I just wanted to share that with you guys because it was just on my heart to share just a little bit. And plus, since I had just done the PBS special, I thought it would be good to share about it. And of course, Cassie's video with P. Diddy all over the place. Like, it's not even mind blowing. It's very, very hard to watch. And it's very sad that she had to deal with it. It's sad when anybody has to deal with that. And me, I know I didn't understand my value, my worth. I didn't care as much, but I do now. And I love the Lord and I love myself. And I definitely want anybody who's going to come back and listen later to just know there is a person for you. But you need to be patient because God's always working things out. All right. Well, that's all I wanted to share. Hopefully, it didn't go too long. And I'm going to share one more thing. If you haven't found the book, The Gift to Find God's Love, Guilt and Shame Turned into My Shine, I'll put it in the comments for you guys so you guys can find it too. And then you'll know where it's at. And we're like, hey, I've seen this before. Well, maybe you have and maybe you haven't. But if you haven't, that's okay. I will get you guys the link and you guys can just find it and you guys purchase it. Please do, if you do get it, definitely leave a comment for it. And if you liked the book, because like I said, I'm sharing my story and I'm sharing it because there are people that need encouragement. And I found encouragement with the Lord and I found help and strength with that. And it was like, okay, this was hard, but I was glad. I was very glad about it. So let me get God's gift through his word for you guys. Because I was like, I was trying to find it before. Finding God's love. Yes. And isn't it so amazing how he's so faithful? I mean, he's so faithful. And there's so many times I was just like, man, the Lord has been so gracious to me. And so I found it for you guys. I'm going to put it in here. It's probably pretty long, but at least it's there. I should use a different thing, but that's there for you guys. And then the last thing I will put on here is the podcast that you can go check out, which is God's gift through his word. God's gift through his word. Which, funny thing, the podcast came from the book. So that's how it worked out for me. God's gift through his word, the podcast, that's how it developed for me. So I was like, oh, well, I didn't know that I really was going to be sharing so much on God's gift through his word, but the podcast itself, it's brought me so much hope for what God's got going on, not necessarily me, but what the Lord's got going on in his plan, his plan. So that's important to me because I remember I said I'm going to give you guys Spotify. I wanted to be accountable to God first when I really started podcasting. And for those of you that have been following me for a long time, that's what I wanted to do. I said, listen, I have to really do this. I want to be accountable to God first, not man, but just God first. So I'm gonna put this in here. There's a lot of stuff in here, but if you guys go ahead and follow, you can follow God's gift through his word. Check out definitely old episodes. You have the book, The Gift to Find God's Love, Guilt and Shame Turned into My Shine. And then, of course, you have me here talking to you guys. So I'm going to get off of here. I hope you guys have a blessed day. Remember what I always say, to be blessed, motivated, and always inspired to do what the Lord lays on your heart. And thank you again, Acapone, for really coming over and sharing. So you guys have a blessed day. Thank you guys for tuning in. Have a great day. Oh, I can't end yet. I gotta sign out. Let me go ahead and put my, you guys are gonna let me get out of here without my theme song. Let me go ahead and put that on now, and then you guys all say goodbye.
God gets through his word. It's God's gift through his word. It's God's gift through his word. It's God's gift through his word.
All right, that was it. You guys have a very blessed day. Take care.